juice that is fermented, we call wine. Lastly, after these three eligible candidates, we have the bramble bush. The bramble bush is one described as a bush that has thorns. It will carry what we're more familiar with as raspberries, as its choice. But it was one of the bushes least desired, but it was the only bush that said, I'll do it, but if you elect me, just know you will have to abide under my shadows, or else I will have fire come from me and devour you as the cedars of Lebanon. Last point, the cedars of Lebanon speaks to the strength and majesty of the Lebanon tree. The cedars of Lebanon is so distinctive that it is what Solomon and David brought from Lebanon to build the first temple. So the symbolic nature of the cedar, which means that with the majesty, the strength, and the notoriety of the Lebanon tree, if you elect me, the bramble bush says, just know that there will be consequences. But they went ahead and said, we want you, bramble bush. Case in point, be careful what you ask for. Because we have had choices in America. Call it olive tree, or call it another candidate. Call it the fig tree, or call it another party. Call it the grapevine, or call it another movement. Call it the bramble bush, or call it the elected president. Just know that God has a way of allowing us to get what we want. Because sometimes, giving a person what they want, they have to find out if it's really what they need. We already know that some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Now, that sounds wrong on the onset. An unanswered prayer is a gift. Well, you ask somebody that was praying for that person who they just had to have 20 years ago. And they see that person 20 years later, and they thank God that God did not give them that person who they just had to have. Amen, somebody? You ask that person about that job that you just believed, that person who believed they just had to have that promotion. They didn't realize what that promotion encountered. But it was only after 15 years of seeing the person that got the job and all that they went through that they go back and thank God that you didn't give me that job. You ask the person who was praying for investment strategies and someone turned them on to the place that went bankrupt in Dallas, Enron, thank you, who vested in Enron only to find out the person who wanted to put money into Enron didn't get a chance to. I'm telling you, sometimes God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Because sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for. Amen. Case in point, America, you have asked for the bramble bush. And it's not so much because of him being Trump. It is not so much because he is the elected president. It is not about that. It's about the climate in America. Yeah. You have walked away from the olive tree. Yes. That said that we need to keep God first. Yes. You have walked away from the fig tree who said we got to honor God's word. Yes. You have walked away from the grapevine who declared that we need to keep Sunday holy. Yes. And you have decided in a country like America that it's okay to change the rules. So God says that every now and then I have to give them what they ask for in order for them to appreciate who I am. You have brought a bramble bush into the White House. That doesn't mean his name is Trump. This is not about that. Because it could have been Hillary. It could have been whoever else was running. You know, you can beat up Trump all you want. I understand why you're hitting him. But I'm telling you this, that because of America has spoken, God has given America a bramble bush. And that's because why? Because we have turned our back on God. We have told God we don't want nothing to do with him. We've told God we don't want his rule in the Supreme Court. We don't want his theory throughout our schools. We don't want anything to do with church. In fact, we declare it to be a separation of church and state. You got to be careful what you ask for. Because when you separate the church from the state, just know that the state is on its own. And outside of God, no one can stand on the affirmative. As I've often told you, I asked the question, where were you being upset about the election now, before the bramble bush? Where were you in 1962 when Madam O'Hara stood by herself, so to speak, and took prayer out of school? You weren't upset then because you just decided, well, I don't have to pray at school. I can wait to church to pray. Whatever we gave as a lullaby, why we allowed this woman to single-handedly in a country whereby it's a Christian state to take prayer out of school. Where were you in 63 when we allowed them to take the study of the Bible out of school? To whereby in 1925, as you heard me tell you, that we allowed a battle to unfold between Scope, monkey trials, that took place in Tennessee. And that battle said what? There was someone that got offended because you was teaching creation in the schools. Someone got offended, Michael, that all you did was wanted to teach from this Bible about everything started with, in the beginning, God. Someone who got offended brought a case of the ACLU that hit the wires to whereby now it's an argument between teaching creation or evolution. And evolution had a person with a mouthpiece that out-talked us. Khalil, this man who represented the evolution party, he out-talked our man. Why? Because he was able to convince that there should be both taught. And now, if you teach creation, you must teach evolution. Where were you in the 80s when they took the Ten Commandments off of the wall? I'm glad you asked, because God is saying, now, America, you have a bramble bush that's going to be running the country for the next 4 years. And again, it's not about who's sitting there, it's the attitude of the land. The land has voted that, God, you don't know what the difference is between a man and a woman. The land has said, God, you don't know what a true marriage looks like, so we'll redefine it for you. The world and the land of America has told God that, you know what, we don't want you giving us that old time understanding about how things should be. This is a new age. This is 2016, as though God doesn't know how to count. 2016, and we want it to be done this way. And God said, so you're asking me out of your institutions? So you're asking me out of the definition of what a marriage is? You're asking me out of the institutions in this land that was once protected because you all honored me, you want me out? Guess what? It's time that you get what you're asking for. And so the next 4 years, let me give you the rest of the story. Abimelech ruled for a total of 3 years, Mike. He ruled and the people could not stay out of warfare. Every time they looked around, it was a fight somewhere because Abimelech just was not the ruler that God wanted in. But God used Abimelech to get the rest of the people's attention. Abimelech ruled for the 3 years. And it was time for God to take him off the scene. God had him pursue an army up a tower. And while the army was up in the tower, Abimelech thought it was a good idea to set a fire to the bottom of the tower. And so as he went in to do the fire, someone, a woman, and I say woman because God's word makes it specific, that it was a woman that looked over the tower and saw him lighting the tower. Is that right? And what she did was picked up the world's biggest rock. I fix all this here. All the men in here cowering and all that. I fix all this here. Y'all in here scared and everything. But she picked up the world's biggest rock that she could lift. And she allowed it to fall onto Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. And Abimelech, in his machoism, turned to his armor bearer and said, listen, thrust your sword through me. Otherwise, it will be noised throughout all the land that a woman killed me. True story. Read the rest of it in chapter 9 of Judges. The message is, just know that when given a choice, you do well. It behooves you to always consult God. When you need to make a decision, it is so easy for us to make the decision, and then when the repercussions of that decision come up, now we need God to fix it. Well, here's an idea. Turn to God first and ask him, what is it that he would have us to do? Why? Because then you move with his blessing. Instead of him having to fix the way, he can simply show us the way. And I'm telling you, as the world woke up along with us and looked over to their TV monitors to find out that the Bramble had been elected, and I say this only to let you know that it is God's way of showing us it was not about who was elected. It's about that it's time for America to hear me. In Fresno, I preached the message, can you hear me now? And it had to do with the fact that America, you have gone on shot calling and standing all by yourself, and now you're policing the world, and now nobody can tell you nothing. You run the UN, you got the biggest army. Guess what? When God gets ready to show his might, he has too many things available to him for us to think that he's going to fail. You know, he can do anything but fail. So, know this. You always can get a person's attention when you touch their money. So guess what, America?
Yeah, it is.
God's going to touch the money. You always can get a person's attention when you touch their property. You ever have anyone breaking your house? Breaking your car? Breaking your, I'm telling you. And then lastly, if you touch a person's health, God automatically becomes your best friend. Let the doctor tell you got something wrong. Let the doctor tell you, we don't know what this is. And immediately you know who to turn to.